Welcome to the San Gorgonio Chapter Trail Talk series. My name's John St. Clair, and I will be your Zoom host. And before we get started, I'd like to ask everybody except for our speaker to mute themselves. So if you don't know how to do that, I'll do it for you. But myself and the speaker will be the only unmuted people. And after the program, uh, it's okay to unmute yourself and you can ask questions directly. But during the presentation, we would like you to remain muted. And if you have a question, down at the bottom of your screen, there should be a little talking bubble icon with the word chat. If you click on it, it opens up a little box for you to be able to type in your questions. And the default is to send it to everyone, and that is the way you should leave it. And type in your questions, and Carla and I will keep an eye on that. And if there's a natural place in the program to relay those questions, we'll do it. If not, they'll all get answered at the end. So we'll make sure that everybody's questions are eventually answered. And I'd just like to say that this program tonight is called Big Bear Trails Program. And our speaker is Jordan Lowe. And next month, Carla Kellums, who is one of the members of the Trail Talk Committee, will be presenting Recruiting Outings Leaders for San Gorgonio Chapter. And she's going to explain the process we go through to recruit and train outings leaders for the San Gorgonio Chapter. And then in October, where the program will be hiking on the John Muir Trail. And Rachel Wilkin is going to be giving that talk. Okay, so the Trail Talk Committee is composed of myself, John St. Clair, Carla Kellums, and Julianne Anderson. Julianne will be joining later. She's stuck in traffic driving home from Los Angeles, where she works. And so I'd like to do a quick introduction of our speaker for tonight. Jordan Lowe has always had a passion for the outdoors, growing up hiking in the mountains of Colorado. He attended school at Utah State University, obtaining a recreation resource management degree. He continues to pursue his passion for outdoor recreation as the Big Bear Trails Program manager. So, Jordan, I'm going to put you on spotlight and then take myself off.
Perfect. Well, thank you, John. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here so we can get my presentation started.
Right.
All right. How's that looking for you guys?
Looking good.
Excellent. Well, like John said, my name is Jordan Lowe. I work with the Southern California Mountains Foundation, which has several programs, which we'll get into, but primarily with the Big Bear Trails program. So we run the Big Bear Trail Host program, which I'll get into a little bit more, but it's a volunteer organization here in the Big Bear area that works to educate, maintain, and monitor the trails in the Big Bear area. We are a proud partner with the U.S. Forest Service, and we work here in the San Bernardino National Forest on the Mountaintop Ranger District. So if you guys aren't familiar with Big Bear Lake, this is kind of an overview of the area that we cover as the Big Bear Trails program. So you can see we've got Big Bear Lake there in the middle. Up to the top, you can see a little dotted line. That's the PCT. And so the PCT does run through our town. We are a big PCT town. As you can see, the town itself is primarily surrounded by the San Bernardino National Forest, which creates a really interesting opportunity for our residents to have direct access to the outdoors and to recreation opportunities. So we do monitor and maintain and educate about 100 miles of trails in the Big Bear area. You can see it extends all the way south to the Santa Ana River Trail, crossing the 38 highway there. And then you can see we extend as far west as the Exploration Trail that takes you to the top of Keller Peak Fire Lookout. We have a number of different kind of trail systems in the area, which I'll get into a little more. If you guys aren't familiar with Big Bear Lake, we're primarily a big tourism hub. We are located 3 hours away from the greater LA area, which means about 10 million people live within a 3 hour drive of the Big Bear Lake area. During COVID, those numbers exploded as everyone was directed to go. Your limits were within that 3 hour drive range. And so while many places were seeing less outdoor recreation, we actually saw an abundance of it. And so recently it's been kind of extra crowded in Big Bear here in the last few years, which has created some interesting challenges. The Big Bear area itself sits at about 6,700 feet. That's the elevation of the lake. The ridge lines around the area can reach 10,000 feet is our tall, or 9,000, just shy of 10,000 feet is our highest peak at Sugarloaf Mountain. And this area was native home to the indigenous peoples in the area. They were recorded in the area for about 10,000 years previous. Spanish settlers encountered the area in about 1,000, 2,000 years ago. And that's when it started to kind of build up in infamy and in population. There was a small gold rush in the Holcomb Valley area, which is just one ridge line over from the lake you see in the image. And that gold rush, while not successful in terms of amount of gold recovered, was successful in kind of putting Big Bear on the lake and populating it. The lake itself is a man-made lake. It was originally built to maintain citrus groves down in the Redlands area, and so it was an agricultural lake. These days, its primary function is a recreation lake, and so those lake levels are really critical to the amount of recreation on the lake, and very little water actually goes downstream to feed those citrus groves anymore. Getting more into the Big Bear area and the hiking trails here, this is one of the handouts we hand out at the Big Bear Discovery Center, which is our local visitor center and ranger station in the valley. One thing I really love about this guide is it's a really easy way to hand someone a piece of information and get them out into the forest without, having to give them way too much information. They can kind of peruse at their own speed. You can see here almost every trail is going to have your distance, your elevation gain, as well as kind of a difficulty rating, ranging from easy to moderate to difficult. This pamphlet also, this is 2 pages of it. The other 2 pages include a map, which is very similar to the one you just saw on the last screen, as well as the leave no trace principles. So I just wanted to share that with you guys. You can also see the small Christmas tree green icons are indicating an area that requires an adventure pass. You guys are probably familiar, adventure passes have come out in recent years, and the funding goes to help maintain these recreation areas and trailheads to provide better bathrooms and trash services. So I wanted to highlight some of kind of what's been going on in Big Bear in the last few years. So we do have a new trail area here in the Big Bear Valley. It is over there in Sugarloaf, so you can see it's on the east end of the valley, right off of Highway 38. So many of you may not know this area directly, but it's kind of right as you're getting into town off the 38. It's located over by the high school, if you're familiar. This is kind of a zoom in of that area I was showing you. This is the Maple Hills Trail Complex. The Maple Hills Trail Complex was built with the Bear Valley Unified School District Education Foundation. A very long name, but what it entails is a private landowner owned this land and wanted to donate it to the high school and to the community. And he wanted people to be able to get out and recreate. And the school didn't really have the resources to manage this land. And so instead, an education foundation was founded with the same name as the local school district. And in about 25 acres here, there's about 100, or pardon me, in 25 acres, there's about 25 miles of trails here. It's pretty jam-packed, but what it allows for is a number of different recreation opportunities. Built in conjunction with the local cross-country team, just there out of Big Bear High School, there is a 5K 3.3 mile loop, a little bit over a 5K. That way they have room for the start and finish. That allows the kids to train at really close to the high school on really nice trails. And then they also can do memorial events there. They do a annual 5K for the memorial of the local high school cross-country coach who passed away in recent years. You can see there's a number of loop opportunities in this area, and you can also see they're graded by their difficulty. This area has really nice multi-use recreation opportunities. The trails are really nice for hikers who want to get out and get the mileage in. If you're a trail runner, this is a great place near town that you can get out, jam-pack the miles in without getting yourself too far out. But it also has some really nice bike riding implements, including some banked turns and some small jumps and features on those difficult trails you see marked in black. The Maple Hills Trail Complex is a private landowner, like I said. One of the unique possibilities of this is that we don't have to get bogged down in some of the Forest Service legislation. When you work through federal government, things take a little bit longer versus with private entities, they can really pull the trigger. So just recently, this youth sports complex you see in the middle, that's actually been approved recently and is going to be expanding, and they're going to be adding just large multi-use fields for the community. And so we've actually had to reroute some trails in the area. So there have been some recent updates here in the last month or so to this map. So if you're already an avid user of Maple Hills Trail, take a look at the elementary trail. It connects in a different spot. And if you're not, definitely get out there and give these trails a try. There's some really beautiful areas. You get some beautiful scenic overlooks of the Baldwin Lake area. And it's just gorgeous. Next, I wanted to update everyone on kind of a major project happening in the valley. Castle Rock Trail, as you may or may not know, historically has the worst trailhead of all time. It is not even a trailhead. It is a highway shoulder pullout where people park and then run across the street on a tight curve to get to the trailhead. The trail itself is a gorgeous trail. It takes you to see stunning views of Big Bear Lake. You get to see Castle Rock, which is a large rock feature that people like to climb, mountain climb, as well as just kind of scramble up the backside. But where you can see that star is located is where Castle Rock is located. The parking lot you'll see is outlined in white on the top left. So this parking lot actually resides on city land. And then the trail itself in red is the old trail, exists on Forest Service property. So as one of the things we've done as the Big Bear Trails program is to try to connect all the different agencies and jurisdictions we have within the valley. We work with city, county, private landowners, as I've mentioned, the Forest Service as well. And we even work with local municipalities to work to get easements across their lands to make single track trail where it makes sense. So this is one of the big projects that's been going on. You can actually see the cars in this picture parked on the side of the road quite haphazardly in some pretty rough areas. It's not uncommon on a busy Saturday to see parents clutching their kids' hands and running across the street to go do this trail. So after years of multi-jurisdiction work and kind of getting the community together and getting behind it, the city is building a parking lot. They started construction groundbreaking on August 5th. So it's only been going on for about 2.5 weeks. Behind the scenes, it's been going on for about 8 years. But they're building this beautiful parking lot. It's going to hold 33 cars, include bathroom services and trash services. We, as the Big Bear Trails Foundation, have worked with the Forest Service and the city in conjunction to plan this new route, and we're actively working to get it through the Forest Service approval. So that way, the second this parking lot opens, there'll be a new trail installed. So that way, people won't have to go back to the old one. And then one of the things we also do as education is we're going to be providing and handing out several flyers among the community to really educate people about this trail change. But if you've ever hiked Castle Rock, it's going to be awesome. I'm so excited. If you haven't, maybe wait until after the construction. It's not worth running across the road. But let's get into the Southern California Mountains Foundation a little bit more. As you can see, there's a number of programs here on the screen. The Southern California Mountains Foundation is a nonprofit, and we have several programs that work beneath us. The oldest is the Children's Forest, located with the purple logo. The Children's Forest started in the late 80s after a wildfire came through the Keller Peak kind of Running Springs area. And local kids from schools and communities got together to help replant over 100,000 trees in the area, as well as open a visitor center that was run for kids by kids, with high schoolers leading elementary schoolers and middle schoolers and things of that nature. Next in green, you'll see the Big Bear Discovery Center. The Big Bear Discovery Center is located in the Big Bear area on the north side of the lake. We are in conjunction with the Forest Service Ranger District here in the area. And so we actually share offices with those folks. And this is the primary visitor area. We see about 1 million visitors every year to this visitor center alone. Our numbers have been down a little bit since COVID. But it's a great place for information. If you ever have friends going to Big Bear and you want to get them some of the pamphlets you saw before, if you have questions about the area, come visit our volunteers that work behind the front desk. They're great. They've been out there just as much as you have, maybe even more, and they've got all the information you're looking for. Next in blue, you'll see our fire lookouts program. Our fire lookouts here on the forest, there's 6 different ones, 3 on the mountaintop, which are Keller, Strawberry, and Keller, Strawberry, Morton Peak, and Butler Peak, pardon me, 4. And those 4 lookouts are staffed by volunteers, 8 hours, sometimes even 16 hours a day during the fire season to help monitor for fires. These fire lookouts back in the day were run by Forest Service staff members, but after loss of funding, the Southern California Mountains Foundation actually started this program to get those fire stations back up and looking and help protect communities here on the forest. Just last year, one of our lookouts had 2 different smoke reports, both of which were the first actual report of the fire before anyone else had called it in, which means they were able to get a jump start on firefighters and protective services to those areas. We'll jump down to that big old Jeep you see. That's the off-highway vehicles program. They monitor all the green stickers and Forest Service roads here in the Big Bear area and on the San Bernardino National Forest. So whenever you're out on those green stickers, those 50-inch trails, you might run into our off-highway vehicle volunteers. You can always recognize them by a nice bright yellow magnet on the side of their rig. So go ahead and give them a holler and say hi. We also have our Urban Conservation Corps, which is a conservation corps located in the San Bernardino area and the Coachella Valley. This conservation corps is based on getting individuals, at-risk individuals specifically. We offer services for GED if you've been in the justice program that actually bumps you up on our hiring list. We're trying to get these individuals and get them into what we call green collar jobs. We show them things about restoration, planting new plants, plant ID. They get out, they learn about trail construction, they learn about firefighting, they learn about recreation sciences. And what we've seen is an amazing kind of discovery in their minds as they go from kind of inner city to seeing what the forest has to offer and ways they can actually work in the forest. And one of the great things we have with the partnership with the Forest Service is our Urban Conservation Corps members actually have a direct hiring authority with the Forest Service. So what that means is instead of the Forest Service having to go through the federal process of listing a job, waiting 3 months, going through the interview process, then hiring someone, which can take up to a year or more in some cases, they can say, we have a vacancy and we like this guy, and they can sign papers right then and there to get him hired, him or her hired, and start working for the Forest Service. Currently on the San Bernardino National Forest, we currently have 4 different ex-Corps members who are working within the forest due to this direct hiring placement, working as recreation techs, biologist techs, various positions to help maintain and preserve our forest. With the big guitar right there, you'll see the Music in the Mountains logo. That's our primary fundraiser. We run that every year during the summer. There's a 5-series program where we get cover bands to come in, and our whole tagline is healing the mountains through music. It's our big fundraiser. We always have a great show. We're currently just finished up our 4th one this last weekend, which was the Eagles cover band. Up next is Petty Party, which is the Tom Petty cover band. These last 2 shows we did, we had about 1,000 people at our amphitheater located just behind the Ranger District. Full bar, taco truck. It's a ton of fun. If you haven't heard about it, look us up. It's a great way to come support the programs as well as enjoying yourself for the evening. Last but not least, the reason I'm here is the Big Bear Trails program. The Big Bear Trails program focuses on the trails in the Big Bear area, and we'll get into it a little bit more here. So the Big Bear Trails program started in the early 2000s. A group of individuals watched as the Forest Service lost funding for its trails and watched its trails start to overgrow, run into mismanagement, and start to kind of deteriorate and fall apart. These individuals came together and they formed what was then called the Big Bear Trails Foundation. This was another nonprofit, eventually merged into us, but this nonprofit started from volunteers who wanted to do what was right for the forest in our area. The Big Bear area has about 10,000 year-round residents in the whole valley. On busy weekends, we can surge to about 100,000 people population-wise in the Big Bear Valley. So that's an incredible increase. Most of these people are first-time recreation users, meaning that they're not well-versed in leave no trace or, even basic etiquette principles out on the trail. They don't necessarily know when to yield, who should yield. They don't know that their Bluetooth speaker shouldn't be on the fullest volume. They don't know they need water to hike up this hill. And so as these volunteers got together, not only did they want to maintain the trails, they wanted to educate about the trails. And that's really what kicked it off. As I said a little bit there, the goal is to provide information to help hikers, bikers, and equestrians. report on trail conditions so that way we can maintain them. We have, like I said, 100 miles of trails here in the valley. It's really hard for me to monitor them at all times, especially if a big monsoon comes in. Anything could happen on those trails. Maybe it washes out over there, maybe 2 trees fall down over there. And so those trail conditions can be really critical to forming a work plan. And then, of course, the most exciting part for myself personally, the actual trail work, getting dirty on the trail. Excuse me. Swinging a tool, things like that. In 2018 is when the Big Bear Trails Foundation merged with the Southern California Mountains Foundation and formed its new name, the Big Bear Trails Program. When that happened, this was our first training. You can see here we had a number of people who are still involved with the program. We have some people here on the advisory list, as well as you can see Phil Hamilton over in blue on the far right. He's kind of one of the folks who really started the program. We call ourselves trail hosts because we're there to be hosts out on the trail. Much like when you walk into an area and you're really just looking for someone to kind of help guide you through a store, that's what we like to think of ourselves. We often are just walking around, offering maps, education material, just talking to folks, make sure they know what's going on and know what they're doing, and kind of help to monitor the trails here in the area. As you can see on the screen, we've trained over 100 people to be Big Bear Trails volunteers throughout the years, and it's really made a difference. Some of our qualifications: we need you to be 18 to be a host. If you want to show up to our episodic events, maybe a random work day here and there, you can bring your kiddos along. We'll always find something for them to do. Just a month ago, I was doing trail maintenance over on Maple Hills, and I had a lovely couple bring along their son in kindergarten. He did a great job picking up all the sticks we were cutting and throwing them off the trail, and picking up all the big rocks and getting them off the trail for us. So no age, we can definitely find work for him. I'm not going to hand your 8-year-old a chainsaw. Don't worry, we'll definitely be smart about it. Of course, we do have a basic training that just kind of outlaws our rules and policies as a volunteer and kind of helps educate you on what you're kind of going for out there and what you're looking to do. We do ask for our volunteers to shoot for 50 hours a year. One of the things we do that is we find that 50 hours is actually really easy if you think about it. There's 52 weeks in a year. That means you have to hike less than 1 hour per week. So all you got to do is go out and go for a long hike on a Saturday, and you've covered yourself for the week and more. And then, of course, as proud partners with the Forest Service, we do need to abide by the volunteer rules, which we get into during our basic training. The expectations, they're pretty darn easy. We need you to commit to responsible recreation. What that means is if you're going to be wearing the shirt, I don't want to catch you cutting down an illegal trail or, running past a horse when you should be pulling off and, observing proper trail etiquette. We do ask that you wear the trail host uniform while on duty. That allows you to be visibly recognizable to our guests, as well as give yourself a sense of authority. So that way they know you're someone worth talking to rather than just, perhaps a random person of the public. And then, of course, as volunteers, we always, always, always want you to log your volunteer hours. It's really important to us to show the Forest Service what we've been doing. And we'll get into a little bit of some of our recent accomplishments, and I can put that into perspective for you guys. We ask you to monitor the trails and submit trail condition reports. We have these really high-tech, fancy QR codes that when you scan them, if you're out on the trail, let's see you come across a downed tree. Scan that QR code. On your phone, it'll ask for your GPS. You click yes, and boom, now I know exactly where the tree is. Some of our trails, Skyline Trail, you guys might be familiar with, is over 15 miles long. So if there's a tree down on Skyline Trail and you text me and you say, there's a tree down, you didn't really narrow it down that much. But when I can get the exact GPS location, I can then get approval, get eyes on it, and then we can get someone out to take care of it and get it removed as quickly as possible. We ask you to contact the visitors. Talk to them. Say hi while you're out on the trail. Don't just keep your headphones in, your eyes down, and run past. Hey, how you doing? Where are you folks from? Just a nice way to talk to people, and then ask them how it's going. Maybe provide a little information, some maps, some routes. Someone might say, I don't know which way to go. Talk to them a little bit. Are you an experienced hiker? What are you looking for out of today? Some things like that. And then, of course, when you are this kind of person of authority, you are going to run into emergencies. People are going to ask you for this and that. While we never ask our volunteers to provide any first aid that they're unexperienced to, we ask them to be at least able to handle the bare minimums. which is calling for additional assistance. When you're out in the woods and you're trying to get a hold of emergency services, it can be quite difficult. They love to ask, what are your crossroads? And when you're up off a Forest Service dirt road and a dirt single track trail, you don't exactly have crossroads. So we've worked with local law enforcement to figure out the best way to handle those situations. And we go over that in our training. There's a few different ways to do it. But yeah, just, handling emergencies when appropriate in an appropriate manner, never working outside of anything that you're trained or qualified to do. Incentives. The first one is the most important. We're trying to make the mountaintop safer and friendlier users. None of us have ever enjoyed the guy who comes by on a mountain bike at 1,000,000 miles an hour and you're jumping out of the trail scared. And no one ever loves when you're running into people who are in bad positions, flip-flops, and half a water bottle on a 90-degree day. So that's what we're dedicated to, making it safer and more friendly to the users of the area. One of the other incentives is when you are volunteering for the Forest Service, you are considered an employee, which means you are eligible for workman's compensation. So while you are out volunteering, let's say you're at one of our volunteer days and something goes wrong, you throw that tool weird, you pick up a rock weird, you're going to be covered under the workman's comp. That is an incentive onto its own, which helps give you a little bit of kind of safety net to fall onto when you are volunteering. This does also cover you when you are out hosting. So let's say you're out hosting and the only reason you really went out that day was to go volunteer. If something does happen to you, you fall, we're going to take care of you. One of the other benefits we have due to our relationship with the local ski resort is the Snow Summit Sky Chair is free to use when our volunteers are wearing our trail host uniform. This means that if you show up at Snow Summit with your bike or just yourself, if you show up, they're going to give you a free ride to the top. They are going to ask you to sign their form, their liability release form at the mountain, but you're going to be able to ride the chairlift for free. And then you're going to be able to experience some of those gravity-fed mountain bike trails, as well as hiking trails and access to the top of the ridge line from Snow Summit for free. Talking about some of the events we do. So we do episodic trail workday events almost bi-weekly. These trail events are where we ask members of the public as well as our own volunteers to come together, get out and get dirty. We're picking up logs, we're moving rocks, we're fixing streams, we're cutting back bushes. These are the things that we do very consistently. Now we have a couple of these work days that are really big events for us. So you can see National Trails Day and National Public Lands Day. Those are when we really push to get people out on trails and working. This last National Trails Day, we had 20 people out on the trail for about 5 hours, and we were able to do some great improvements and repairs to the Cougar Crush Trail. The signing was scratched, graffitied. It was looking worse for wear. We got those replaced with proper signage. And where it intersects with the PCT, we had a large number of PCT hikers who were getting confused on which way to go. That intersection's not especially clear due to the missing signage. And so we were able to clean that up, redo all the signing for those events. And that was our National Trails Day. National Public Lands Day is coming up. It's going to be September 28th. So if you guys want to come get dirty, we're going to be working on Castle Rock Trail on the upper portion, making sure it's all fine-tuned for that brand new parking lot here in a couple months. Love to have you guys out there. If you're interested, I'll have my contact information at the end. And then one of our really fun events is our Treats and Trails event. So this event is marketed towards younger children, typically in the stroller to kind of middle school range. We do it midday, and because of the second homes and the Airbnb areas in the Big Bear area and kind of that format, you can't really go out and trick or treat. It's like one house has a family, and then 10 houses down, there might be the next family. And so one of the things we do is we provide this large trunk or treat opportunity, but we do it on community trails. This last year, we did it on the brand new city paved Rathbun Trail, which connects to the Alpine Zoo. One of the beauties of that trail is since it is paved and ADA accessible, we're able to get more people out on the trails. Parents can bring out strollers. They're not going over, single track with rocks and roots and bumps. And we get kids out and get them walking and show them, how cool this trail already is. And at the meantime, having fun in costumes and handing out candy. And that event will be coming up the last weekend of October. So if you got any young kiddos or if you want to have a booth, we'd love to have you. We do operate an Adopt a Trail program with the Forest Service here in the area. When people adopt a trail, they're doing a monetary donation to the program, which helps ensure that we're able to do things like volunteer recognition, acquire new tools for our workdays, and support items for those workdays, such as waters, Gatorades, granola bars, things of that nature. The annual cost is $2,000. You get a logo on a sign, as you can see in the picture. It's going to be a nice sign at the bottom. We're going to have these on your specific section of the trail. And almost all of our trails in the valley have this exact signage. We're going to have digital recognition. We're going to blow you up on our website, our social media, things of that nature. The physical recognition is in our visitor center in the Discovery Center. We do have a rotating screen that has all of our sponsors on it to thank them and spread awareness of their involvement with the organization. And then we do private work parties. So if you as an organization want to do a team bonding day where you get 15 employees out on the hill and you do a little trail maintenance, we're going to set that all up for you. We're going to do all the behind the scenes work with the Forest Service to get all the approvals and make sure, all the ologists and the biologists, the heritage folks, the archaeologists, they're all on the same page. And then we're going to get it all set up so that way these groups can come in and do days like that. Typically people, you also get like a little bit more say in the trail maintenance. So if it is really your section and you're the one coming out and helping us maintain it, if you want to do something, well, I'm more inclined to listen to your idea because you're there working with us in the dirt and you're helping out the program. To talk a little bit about our data, we run a government fiscal year, so it's October to October, so it's a little weird. So we're not quite done with our 2024 data, but I will be here in the next month. But to put our 2023 into perspective, we have about 60 volunteers that are out hosting consistently. Those volunteers donate over 2,000 hours and spoke to over 14,000 and a half people. They're out just hiking the trails while they're already out going for a bike ride, while they're already taking their dogs for a walk. They're just talking to people, keeping an eye on the conditions. Our education and information kiosk informed over 4,700 people. These are things we do on busy Saturdays at different locations here in the valley, where we just go out and talk to recreators. Hey, do you need a map? Do you know where you're going? Do you care where you're going? Do you know that it's really hot? You might want some water because it's noon and you're about to do a 3,000 elevation foot gain. Things like that. Our most recent one, we were just at Snow Summit this last weekend for their downhill race. We talked to over 600 people that day alone. Different people handing out maps, letting riders know other areas they can go ride here in town. We did our trail work days, those episodic events I mentioned. We had 9 of those last year. In those 9, we had 126 additional volunteers, random members from the public, maybe your friend, maybe your mom, maybe your uncle, and they came out and gave us an additional 436 hours of purely trail maintenance work. This maintenance work happens all around the valley on a variety of different trails, just kind of prioritized off of how busy they are, as well as that monitoring data we're getting from our volunteers. Those special events I mentioned earlier, we had 3 of those last year, which resulted in an additional 2,000 people talked to. At the end of the year, we had talked to over 20,000 people. As I mentioned, we're seeing 100,000 every weekend. So we're not talking to everybody, but we're talking to a bunch of them. And we're turning them into more educated recreators. We're educating them on leave no trace principles. We're leaving them on etiquette principles. And in the end, we're helping to create a more engaged and lifelong recreator. If you go out and your first time on the trail is your buddy takes you, you don't have anything, you're not prepared, and it turns into the worst hike of your life, you're not going to be inclined to go back out into the woods. It's just not what you're going to want to do. If your first hike is in Big Bear and you run into one of our trail hosts and they hand you a map and they talk to you and you feel really good about the hike you're about to do and you know where you're going and you're prepared, or they tell you you're underprepared, why don't you walk up to where that bench is, enjoy the views and walk back down? It's going to change your perception of recreating. And in this day and age, we really do need people who want to recreate, especially in the, beautiful natural scenery. And we really need them to be educated recreators. And so that's really our main focus. That's all I have. So I can go ahead and open it up to questions. I can see we've got a few in the chat here. I also have my contact information there. So if you guys do want to get a hold of me, that is my direct email. It's trails@mountains foundation. Don't forget that S on mountains. Feel free to drop me a line if I don't answer any of your questions here, but I think we can go ahead and start getting into it.
Hey, Jordan. It's Julianne Anderson. I wanted to read some of the chat questions so that we can get your take on them. The first is when is the new parking area for Castle Rock Trail expected to be done? Sometime next year or longer term?
It's going to be actually quite shorter than that. So the current project or construction bid is 2 months, and so we're hoping to have it open and running before snow flies.
Nice. Okay. What just to kind of get your information about the Big Bear Valley area and the kind of the status of the trails and the kind of work that you guys are doing. Which trails in the Big Bear area need special maintenance attention? Which may be more in need than average?
Yeah, so there was a number of trails hit during the 22-23 winter season.
Right.
Basically every tree that wanted to fall down in the woods did fall down due to that heavy storm. We pretty much got all of those handled. There's still a few in some remote areas we're still working on. But the next wave of weather that hit us really hard was Tropical Storm Hillary. And that actually ended up doing some damage to the Sugarloaf Mountain Trail, as well as the 2N93 road in that area. So there's actually a closure for that road and it's foot traffic only. If you've been on that trail, you know that there's an area that's kind of wet. And then as you get up, start to climb in kind of, a more alpine environment, that whole section got really heavily eroded from Tropical Storm Hillary. Dropped like 2 inches of rain in like 5 hours over there. And all that water ended up creating a severe rut down the trail. And so that's when we've been ongoing working with the Forest Service because of the level of dirt moved. We're having to go through a lot of heritage issues to make sure that we're not encroaching in any indigenous people sites or any sort of heritage sites from the early settlers of this area.
Okay. Do your trail hosts check permits or do they leave that to uniform Forest Service rangers?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. So at the end of the day, our trail hosts are there purely for education, not enforcement. So we don't do anything with permits and we don't do any sort of ticketing, things like that. One of the things you can do, take pictures, send us information. Um, One of the things my volunteers are really up to date on are people who are extending their 14-day camping limit in the forest. And so I will get a picture. It's been the day 15. This guy hasn't moved. He's in his bus. He's got a whole setup. He's leaving trash everywhere. We can go ahead and expedite the process of getting that over to law enforcement on the Forest Service to make sure that's handled properly. So while we don't check permits, if you're seeing something, you can say something and we can pass that up the chain. And having those direct monitors of what's going on in the forest is incredibly helpful.
Got it. What are you observing about hikers right now? Are most people new to hiking or are most people more experienced?
So in the Big Bear area specifically, we run into a lot of novice recreationists. Part of that is just our proximity to the LA area and how easy it is to get to Big Bear. It's on the map for a lot of reasons, and so it's not uncommon for people to get to Big Bear and say we're going to go for a walk, and then they look it up on all trails, and then they go head out on something. But it's also not uncommon in Big Bear to run into super dedicated, outdoor enthusiasts who've been doing it for decades or are super experienced. We host several ultra marathons and hiking competitions here in the Big Bear Valley that are recognized worldwide and are, gnarly 100-mile mountain marathons through the woods. And so it's definitely a mix of both, but I would say primarily in our area, it's more novice hikers.
Okay. What's the most heavily trafficked trail in the area?
If you count the pedal path as a trail, that's it. If you consider a trail to not be paved, I would say it's probably a mix between Castle Rock and I want to say Castle Rock and Pine Knot Trail. Um, Pine Knot Trail takes you up to Grandview Point, which is a beautiful overlook of the Santa Ana River, as well as a gorgeous view over into the San Gorgonio Wilderness. And that one sees a lot of people. We don't see a lot of people finishing that hike, but we see a lot of people starting that hike. That kind of leads back to the novice hikers. It's about 2,000 feet of elevation gain. So a lot of people can kind of, get started on something they're maybe not prepared for, especially if you're coming up from sea level and residing in the Big Bear area. And then the Castle Rock Trail is it's so predominant. It's right there. People see it when they're coming into town. I would say maybe the other one you could throw in as a runner up would be the Woodland Trail, which is our family kind of oriented hike. It's about 1.5 miles long. It's only about 100 feet of elevation gain, and we have interpretive signage along as well as a booklet that goes with it, so that way people can learn more about the area. And that one gets used a lot just due to its easy kind of difficulty tag.
Got it. Got it. I spoke with your colleague, Sierra Harvey, and she mentioned that the community room in the Discovery Center is now available for classes and seminars. Do you have a lot of classes at the Discovery Center? How's that working out?
Yeah, so we're definitely trying to increase those numbers. Typically what'll happen is we'll ask volunteers to put on different programs. And so it might just be, 2 hours about trees, 2 hours about birds, some different things like that. We do also have different folks who will come in either from the Forest Service or other entities that can do talks as well. We're definitely always looking for more people who are willing to get involved and help spread that information. So if you're particularly passionate and something that kind of aligns with outdoor recreation or education about the outdoors, we'd love to have you, even if it's just for, an hour talk on a Saturday.
Got it. When's your next host training, Jordan?
Yeah, so we kind of do those as needed. So if you're interested in becoming a trails host, definitely reach out to me at that trails@mountainsfoundation.org email there. Once we typically get about 3 or 4 people, we'll hold a host training. We like to kind of get that community feel. But if I have somebody who's really interested in becoming it and I maybe don't have that 3 or 4 people to bring together, we can totally do it one-on-one, just meet at the Discovery Center and talk through some things. Um, if you're already involved in this group, it's not going to be too much of a discussion. You're already pretty aligned with the values.
Yeah, yeah. And finally, the final chat question: how are you contacting people? Is it like you in the photo here on the slide? Are you tabling a lot at various events? Are you handing out literature and maps? What's your means of contact with most people?
Yeah, so I would say that most of our contacts happen from our volunteers out running into recreators, where they're just out hiking, wearing their trail host t-shirt or their jersey, as you can see here on the bike, and just talking to people. Um, when you get someone who's already an invested enough outdoor recreationist where they want to be out every day and they're willing to talk to people, they're going to run into way more people than I can even on a busy Saturday with a tabling event. We still do those tabling events. Like I mentioned, we did 9 of those last year, and we do those every other week. So we balance between education tabling and trail work days throughout the summer with a few special events sprinkled in. But our main ways of contacting the general public is through our volunteers. And our volunteers do this in a number of different ways. It's not always just out on the trail. They can come and volunteer for our tabling events as well as helping with other community events. We have a large number of races that happen here in Big Bear, whether it's bike races or foot races or just hiking challenges. And our volunteers are such a good base that they'll get involved with volunteering for these other events. And so then they're talking to these participants of these events, really one-on-one, asking about their days, asking about the trails. And then we'll go and have a booth to follow up. And people will be like, oh, I talked to Nancy the whole time when I was getting registered. I'm so excited to learn more about the trails, and we'll help kind of provide that information. So it's kind of a mix of several things. We do also run a social media and do some kind of outreach there as well. Um, but yeah, primarily it's our host on the ground.
Got it. Wonderful. Uh, John, Carla, any other questions?
I have a
No,
comment.
not really.
Sorry. I have a comment.
Oh. Go ahead.
See that I work for the Forest Service for 20 years, and I've never seen such a amazing group. I mean, this is fantastic, and I just wanted to thank you guys for doing this work. I mean, this is really, really nice. I mean, sometimes I work with the Park Service and they have docents. And I always thought, well, why don't we have that on Forest Service? And here you guys have a wonderful group. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Do you know of similar programs in other mountain areas or other natural areas?
So there's a number of different mountain biking organizations in the Southern California area that do similar trail maintenance things. One of the things that I found is kind of unique to our program is kind of this education-based hosting side of things. I talked to a large number of groups who, will go out and do trail work days, and they'll do tabling events with some of their volunteers at, bigger things. But as far as I've found, this is kind of the only group that really asks its volunteers to engage with the general public while they're out recreating.
So the San Gorgonio Wilderness Association has a lot of volunteers that help, monitor trails, and they do trail maintenance. I have a good friend that does all kinds of trail maintenance within the San Gorgonio Wilderness area. And so that's another group that does a lot of work in the mountains.
Wonderful. Well, anyone else have questions for our friend and colleague Jordan, who's doing such beautiful work?
Just to say thank you. It was a great presentation and I learned a lot.
Yeah, Jordan, thank you so much. What a beautiful slide presentation. Just really nice. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. If you guys have any questions about the Big Bear area, hike recommendations, want to get involved, please reach out. Don't hesitate. I love talking trails. It's one of my favorite things. So feel free to bug me about anything and everything.
Right on. Yeah.
All right. So I guess I'll stop the recording.